The year was 1992, I was 19 years old at the time, barely out of high school and scraping by with the little money that I was making as a janitor. My place of work was a 7-story office building. My company put me to work there. Basically, I wasn't hired by the owner of the building, but rather the owners hired a janitorial service company and the company assigned me there. Anyway, the office cleaning was my second gig since starting the janitor job. And I tell you, it was actually much better than the first gig, which was a big warehouse in the middle of nowhere. That place was scary. The first night of the gig, everything went smoothly without a hitch. One of the janitors showed me around and taught me the order of things like how they should be cleaned, where first, etc, etc. On the second night, I was left alone on the 3rd floor to do the cleaning on my own. That floor was going to be my responsibility for the foreseeable future. The time was about 10 PM and I was vacuuming the floor. The place is dead silent at nights, but once you turn on the vacuum, you begin to hear the sounds of a war zone. Yeah, commercial vacuums are really loud. So I'm vacuuming like a robot, going through the motions without much thought process. In fact, I remember exactly what my brain was daydreaming of that night. I was asking myself, what would happen in a fight between the Hulk and the alien xenomorph? You think about stupid things like that when you do repetitive labor. At least I do whenever I'm doing something that requires minimal use of my brain. But anywho, in the middle of my solo debate, I got this creepy vibe from my surroundings. It's hard to explain, but I think it's your senses letting you know that something has gone wrong. The hair on your forearm stands up, you feel the chill at the back of your neck, so on and so forth. Hence, I turned off the vacuum and began inspecting my surroundings. At first, it seemed like there was nothing wrong, but then I looked at the windows and noticed there was nothing outside. I saw no buildings, none of the faraway structures were visible, and there wasn't even a hint of ambient light emanating from the outside. I walked over to the north side windows and tried looking up in search of the stars. Then I tried looking down to look for the parked cars. There was nothing. And when I say nothing, I mean to say that everything was black. It was as though someone had applied a black film on the windows while I was vacuuming the floor. Did I panic? Oh heck yeah, I did. I thought the whole building had fallen through a portal to hell. What I did next was to run toward the door that leads to the hallway, which would take me to the elevators. I had to get out of the building somehow. As soon as I reached the door, it opened on its own, thus scaring the bejesus out of me, resulting in me bolting backwards like I had a jetpack on my belly. Thankfully, it wasn't some kind of a monster coming to get me, but instead it was the janitor from the previous night, checking up on me to make sure that I was doing things right. I wanted to tell him, look out the windows, but I was so freaked out that the words wouldn't come out of my mouth. So instead, I looked at him in the eyes, then pointed with my finger toward the windows. I turned around and was about to tell him, oh my god, we are doomed to be stuck in here for an eternity. Fortunately, I guess I should say, I didn't get to say the cheesy line. It was all normal outside, or rather, everything had gone back to being normal on the outside. I could see the buildings, the lights, and the parked cars. Everything seemed fine. My coworker obviously thought that I was acting weird. So to make things less weird, I just told him that I had thought I saw something strange outside, but that it was nothing. He then told me that people tend to see things when they have very little experience with night shifts, that the mind runs wild at nights when you are alone. He told me that he has seen plenty of others say something similar and that I would get used to it. He was right, I did get used to working in the building, but he wasn't right about everything. The whole world disappearing thing, that happened a little too often to say that my mind was making me see things that weren't real. I needed the money, so I continued working, but the world disappearing thing happened again and again for the 6 months that I worked in that building. I got used to it eventually because nothing really happened regardless of whether or not I could see out the window. My mind is perfectly fine. I know so because the strange phenomena happened only in that building. I've worked as a janitor for 2 years more after moving on from that building. I've never had another experience as such, not in the least. The other day, I thought about checking out the building while I was in Cleveland. I live in Montana now, but I had plans to visit my old hometown to pick up something from my cousin. Well, I ended up going to Cleveland, but as fate would have it, the building in question had already been demolished years ago. Maybe that's a good thing. I should really move on from the incident and stop thinking about it so much. It consumes me a little too much and too often, and I don't particularly enjoy that. I think it's finally time to let it go. I was 12 years old when this event took place, which takes us back 17 years in time since I'm 29, now in the present. My family and I, along with my mom's best friend's family, were at a campsite a couple of hours away from civilization. Anyhow, in total there were 9 people in the group, including the moms and dads from both families, me and my sister, and the 3 siblings from the other family. Let's call the other family the Robinsons for the sake of the story. The campsite was situated near a lake, and there were many people camping there on that day. I would say that in our vicinity alone, there must have been at least a dozen other people in sight, so yeah, it was pretty crowded for a campsite. At around 3 p.m., we decided to go for a walk and began heading toward the hills in the westerly direction. About 20 minutes into the hike, my dad stopped in his tracks and said, "Is it just me or did it get really quiet here?" To which Mom replied, "No, you're right. The birds and the bugs, they're all gone. I don't even feel the gentlest of the breeze here." What Mom said was spot on. Only minutes ago, there were birds chirping everywhere and I was followed by a crap ton of bugs trying to get inside my nostril. Strangely, however, they were all gone. While we were standing around and talking about the quietness of the place, suddenly a strong gust of wind nearly took me off the ground. We were all startled by it because of how strong the wind blew. 1 second there was nothing, then all of a sudden you're hit with a gust of wind that makes your upper body move like a kite. To me, that's strange. We continued walking, and not a minute later, I was hit by something, and I mean hit hard, to the degree that I was lifted off the ground, then thrown a few yards away. My body hurt everywhere. I was dazed and confused. I didn't know how to react to the shocking but bizarre situation. Moments later, Dad came to me and asked if I was okay. I could see he was also hurting as he was grunting while he spoke. In any event, I said to him that I thought I was okay, but then I noticed his face change as soon as he had a moment to check my body more thoroughly. He told me to stay still, then immediately yelled for Mom. Dad put something on my stomach as Mom and Sally came running to me. The Robinsons also came to my aid. Then out of nowhere, I felt it. I began to feel a burning sensation on my stomach, and I just knew I was hurt badly. The pain rushed over me so swiftly. I remember laying on the ground thinking that on one hand, I wanted to see how badly I was hurt, but on the other, I was too scared to find out. I didn't look down and stayed still as I lay on the ground. Sally was crying as she looked at me while Mom switched places with Dad, then continued to apply pressure on my stomach. I didn't know it at the time, but Dad had run to the campsite to grab his phone so he could take it where he could get a signal. Keep in mind that this was in the early 2000s, the cell networks around that time weren't all that great, especially in remote places like the campsite we were at. I was taken to the hospital about an hour and a half later. I was lifted off on an air ambulance. It was the first and the last time I rode in a helicopter. But I digress. What happened to me was that I had a hole in my stomach. I don't want to be too graphic, but basically about a quarter of my stomach was open. It was some kind of a miracle that I was able to stay awake until the moment that I had arrived at the hospital. Me surviving the whole ordeal is unbelievable to me. So you might be curious just what the heck happened to me. And I'm sorry to say, we're not really sure. You see, no one saw what had attacked me. Everyone had been knocked down by something all at the same time. We saw nothing. That's including me, the person who was the most badly hurt. Mom told me that one of the EMT told her that it could be a bear, but come on, we would have seen it or at the very least heard something had I been attacked by something as monstrous. I would also add, how does a bear knock down 4 adults and 5 children all at the same time while it cuts up one of the children? Imagine all of that happening in a split of a second. Bears are fast, but not that fast. How is it possible that not a single one of us saw a bear run off? Having said that, me being sure that a bear wasn't the culprit doesn't help in any way to narrow down the list of suspects. I still don't have a clue as to what attacked me on that day. Years later, when I became an adult, I spoke to a couple of zoologists and as well as a naturalist. I'm afraid they too were baffled by my experience. I showed them the proofs of what had happened to me and they believed me too. It's just that they couldn't figure out what was what. Sadly, I think that's the end of my search for the truth.